One resident in assisted living can pay around $6,200 every month. That's $74,400 a year for one person. And when I saw that, I started doing the obvious math. What happens when a building has 50 residents or 60? Because at the pricing I found, one 64 unit community could collect more than $4 million every year. $4 million from one building. At first, that sounded like an unbelievable business until I followed where the money actually went. Because in the model I built, that $4.1 million eventually became about $650,000, which left me with a much better question. If assisted living costs this much, where did the other $3.5 million go? My first assumption was pretty simple. I thought assisted living was basically very expensive housing. A resident gets a room. They stay for months or years, and every month another payment arrives. Brookdale's assisted living and memory care communities were generating about $6,632 per occupied unit each month. So if I imagined 64 occupied units, that's more than $424,000 every month, or just over $5 million a year. That looked incredible. But there was one problem. I was treating the entire $6,632 like rent. And once I looked at what residents were actually paying for, that assumption started falling apart. Before worrying about expenses, I wanted to know whether these prices were even normal. The national median I found was about $6,200 a month. In a lower cost state like Mississippi, the median was closer to $4,369, and Brookdale's assisted living and memory care portfolio averaged $6,632 per occupied unit. So the $6,000 number wasn't some strange luxury outlier. Prices around this level really exist. One resident at $6,632 a month represents almost $79,600 of annual revenue. Now, multiply that across a building. But I didn't want to pretend every room stays full. Brookdale's 2025 assisted living and memory care occupancy was about 80.5%. For a 64 unit community, that works out to roughly 51 and a half occupied units on average. Multiply those occupied units by $6,632 for 12 months, and the building produces approximately $4,100,000 in annual resident revenue. So, my first assumption wasn't completely wrong. The revenue really can be enormous. And that actually made the mystery harder, because if more than $4 million is coming in, what exactly is the resident buying for $6,000 a month? This is where I realized I had been using the wrong comparison. Assisted living isn't just an apartment. The monthly payment can include housing, but also meals, housekeeping, laundry, activities, medication assistance, help with things like bathing, dressing, or walking, and supervision around the clock. So every time I added another service to the list, I also had to add another cost. Meals mean a kitchen. Housekeeping means staff. Personal assistance means caregivers. 24-hour supervision means the building doesn't simply close at 5 o'clock. Then I found the number that really changed my model. Brookdale's assisted living and memory care segment generated about $2.1 billion in resident fees in 2025. Community labor alone cost roughly $1.02 billion, almost half. I had been looking at $6,600 and thinking, that's expensive rent, but almost half of the revenue could disappear into the people required to provide the service. And once I understood that, I wanted to follow one building's money all the way down, because if labor takes nearly half, where does the rest go? So I went back to the 64 unit model, 80.5% occupancy, about 51 and a half occupied units. Annual resident revenue, $4,100,168. Now I started subtracting. First, community labor. Using Brookdale's actual segment cost ratio, the modeled labor bill comes to roughly $2,001,607. Almost half the money disappears immediately. That leaves a little under $2.1 million, still a lot. But labor isn't the only thing keeping the building running. There is food, utilities, maintenance, insurance, real estate taxes, marketing, resident referral costs, and other facility expenses. Using the same operating data, those costs add another $1,007,649. Now, the building that collected $4.1 million is down to about $1,090,911 of facility operating income. That means almost $3 million has already disappeared. And I still wasn't finished, because facility operating income isn't the same thing as owner profit. So, what was actually left after everything else? There is administration, accounting, technology, legal, management, infrastructure. For the model, the allocated general and administrative cost comes to about $253,342. Then there is the building itself. Rooms need refurbishment, equipment gets replaced, systems need maintenance. The property keeps consuming capital. The modeled maintenance capital allocation is another $187,383. And finally, the $4.1 million of resident revenue becomes roughly $650,185, about $54,000 a month, before property financing and income tax. That was the first time the business made sense to me. The resident price really is high, but the cost structure behind that price is also enormous. Still, $650,000 from one building sounded attractive, until I asked the question I should have asked much earlier. How much does the building itself cost? The existing senior housing transactions I found were roughly $154,000 to $183,000 per unit. For 64 units, that's roughly $9.9 million to $11.7 million. And building new is even more dramatic. One 2026 development benchmark was around $388,830 per unit. For 64 units, that's about $24.9 million. Now, the $650,000 profit looked very different. This wasn't a business someone could casually start on weekends with a van and a few $1,000s. It was an operating business sitting on top of millions of dollars of real estate. And then I found another cost I had originally ignored: customers. I had assumed that if there were elderly people who needed care, the rooms would simply fill. But operators spend money finding residents. A successful third-party referral can cost roughly 1 month's resident fee. Using the $6,632 benchmark, one acquired resident could cost about $6,632. And one assisted living sales benchmark put inquiry to move-in conversion at around 9%. So an empty room has two problems. It produces zero resident revenue, and filling it can cost thousands of dollars. That made me stop staring at the occupied rooms. For the first time, I started looking at the empty ones, because the manager still has to work. The kitchen still operates. Insurance still exists. The building still needs maintenance. The night shift still has to be covered. A resident can leave, but a lot of the costs stay. And that's when I realized I'd been asking the wrong financial question. Not, how much does one resident pay? But, how full does the building have to stay? This turned out to be the most important calculation in the entire investigation. Using the cost structure from the base model, the short-run economic break-even point comes out to approximately 67.7% occupancy. For 64 units, That's around 43 or 44 occupied rooms. Below that level, the model begins to go underwater. So I tested 65% occupancy. Not empty, not half full, 65%. Annual revenue falls to about $3,310,694. Then I completed the same waterfall. Revenue $3,310,694 minus labor $2,001,607 minus other facility expenses $1,007,649 minus general and administrative costs $253,342 minus maintenance capital $187,383. The result, a loss of about $139,288. Then I went back to the original 80.5% occupancy. Same building, same resident price, modeled profit, about $650,000. Then I tested 95% occupancy. Revenue rises to roughly $4.84 million. And under the same short-run cost structure, modeled economic profit approaches $1.39 million. So the difference between 65% occupancy and 95% occupancy is roughly $1.53 million a year. Same 64 rooms, same building, no second property, just more of the existing capacity producing revenue. That's operating leverage, and it works in both directions. Because occupancy wasn't the only thing capable of breaking the model. What happens when the resident price falls or the people providing the care become more expensive? I tested pricing first. If effective resident pricing falls 8%, revenue drops to about $3,772,000. Labor stays around $2 million. Other facility costs stay around $1 million, then overhead, then maintenance capital. Final modeled economic profit, about $322,000. An 8% revenue reduction cuts profit roughly in half. Then I tested labor. Raise labor costs 10%. Revenue stays at $4.1 million. Labor rises to about $2.2 million. Finish the entire waterfall, and profit falls to roughly $450,000. A 10% labor increase removes about $200,000 of annual profit. So, by this point, I wasn't asking whether assisted living was expensive anymore. I understood why it was expensive. The question was whether the operator could keep enough expensive rooms occupied while controlling an equally expensive operating system. Normally, I like looking at a business 3 different ways. Could someone do it on weekends? Could it become a full-time business? And could it scale? The first one disappears immediately. Assisted living is a 24-hour residential operation. There is no realistic weekend-only assisted living business. So for that lens, the answer is 0. Not because revenue is bad, because the operating model itself doesn't exist on weekends only. Full-time is different. At 80.5% occupancy, our 64-unit model produces roughly $650,000 of annual unlevered economic profit before financing and income tax. But that sits beside an existing property benchmark of roughly $10 to $12 million. So the income can be attractive, but the capital requirement is enormous. Then there is scale. At 95% occupancy, the same 64-unit footprint reaches around $1.39 million in modeled economic profit. Multiple properties may be able to share things like management systems, technology, purchasing, marketing, and administration. But scale also means more capital, more employees, more regulation, more rooms that need residents. Scale doesn't fix weak occupancy. It magnifies whatever economics already exist. So after all of this, would I actually call assisted living a good business? So here's where I ended up. Startup cost, roughly $9.9 to $11.7 million for the modeled existing property benchmark. or about $24.9 million using the new development benchmark. Profit potential around $650,000 in the base model and around $1.39 million at strong occupancy. Customer acquisition. A successful paid referral can cost roughly $6,600. Risk. At 65% occupancy, the model loses around $139,000. An 8% pricing reduction cuts profit to about $322,000. A 10% labor increase cuts it to about $450,000. Weekend side hustle. No. Full-time operator, potentially scalable business. Yes, but only with serious capital and strong occupancy. My overall verdict? Assisted living can be an attractive operating business, but not because residents pay $6,000 a month. It works when enough rooms stay occupied at a high enough price, while the operator controls an enormous labor and property cost base. When I started this, the number I couldn't stop looking at was $6,200 a month. It seemed almost impossible that one resident could pay that much. By the end, that wasn't the number I cared about anymore. The number I cared about was occupancy, because a high price means very little if too many expensive rooms stay empty. I thought the price made the business valuable. Now I think the empty rooms explain it better, and that idea isn't unique to assisted living. Hotels have empty rooms, airlines have empty seats, factories have unused capacity. Whenever a business carries large fixed costs, how much of its capacity gets used can matter just as much as what it charges. 65% occupancy, a loss of about $139,000. 80.5%, about $650,000 of profit. 95%, about $1.39 million. Empty rooms are expensive, but one number from the investigation is still bothering me. $74,400 per year. That's what the national median assisted living price becomes for one resident. And Medicare generally doesn't pay for long-term custodial care, which made me wonder, how do families actually pay for long-term care?